Welcome to Inland Empire Alive, bringing you issues, events, and perspectives from throughout San Bernardino and Riverside counties. I'm David Brady, and on today's show, I'll welcome retired DJ Vic Slick to talk about his many decades on air at radio station KOLA 99.9 FM. That's today on Inland Empire Alive. My next guest was a familiar voice to listeners here in the Inland Empire for many decades. Please welcome Vic Slick from KOLA 99.9 FM.
Hey, thank you, David. My pleasure to be here.
So, I know you were retired, but I want to go all the way back to the beginning and talk about how it got started. I understand that when you were just a little boy, you dreamed of being on the radio. What sparked that interest?
Well, I was the youngest of four siblings, and which was in the mid to late 60s, and AM radio here in the Inland Empire, KFXM, K-Men, Beach Boys, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Motown Sound. And so my older siblings had the radio on all the time. They were teenagers. And so I just kind of got hooked, and I said, yeah, I want to be that guy. And I would mimic the guys on the air.
And who were some of those personalities? I mean, some of the names, even people nowadays still remember.
Yeah, William F. Williams. There was a few other people that came in. And then they listened to LA radio, which was Charlie Tuna, the Real Don Steele, people like that. It was just, the big names, the big LA markets, and of course the Inland Empire market. When
did you think you could actually make a career out of it?
Never.
Did you always think I need to get a real job at some point?
Yeah, exactly the same. I still think of it that way, and you still need to get a real job.
So you worked for 42 years in the industry. What was your very first job?
Very first job, I answered phones, a request and dedication show at KOLA in Pasadena. All oldies, 1110 KOLA. Great job.
And at that point, what did it take to be given a chance to go on air? What did you have to do to prove yourself?
I wasn't on air right away. I was a producer, which is technically I was like the gopher for the 7 to midnight jock. And so whatever they needed, I would do. I had a bunch of duties inside the station at that time. And but it was a fun time. It was a great learning experience. I did that for about 2 or 3 years.
Do you remember your first on-air shift?
It was at KOLA, about 3 years later. Once again, I was a co-host. So being a co-host, you just
didn't have to work all the gear.
Didn't have to know. I just said, "Yeah, that's right, yes," and someone on line
laugh
3
at their jokes.
Exactly. Someone on line 3 for you. They don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to you. But it was fun.
How did you come up with your persona? Now, obviously, Vic Slick is, an alias. Talk to me about kind of the real person behind the...
Back in the 80s, we did a lot of mobile DJ stuff, weddings and parties and reunions. And I needed a name, and I worked with a guy. This is Vic. He goes, "Nah, you need a better name." So he came up with the Vic Slick. And at that time, Rick James...
Oh, yeah.
Had Rick Slick or Slick Rick, so we just kind of bounced off of that. And it stayed, and we kept it, and it worked.
Did you ever feel there was a distinction between that guy and, Victor Corral, the sort of quiet, off-air person? Did people say, "Hey, you gotta bring it down. You're not on air"?
No, you're always on the air.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it ever hard, going out and meeting fans, and they always had that expectation of keeping your energy up and being that voice, being that guy?
Well, like I just said, you're always on. You always got to be on, because it's possibly like an actor, or the fun part is that when they meet you, they say, "Hey, you don't sound like you look like you sound." Yes.
Of all those decades, what were some of the highlights?
Boy, just a lot of different things. We had the opportunity to broadcast all kinds of different places when I was at KOLA, from the beaches of Waikiki to on a Carnival cruise ship to Disneyland, theme parks, meeting fans, going out in remotes, grand openings, hot rod shows, just doing all that kind of stuff out there. And just being on the air was just fun. Interacting with the listeners, because, it's all about the listeners.
What did people tell you your voice meant to them over the years, that hearing you, day after day, and sort of, the same running gags and kind of the same, puns and things, what did that mean to them over the years?
Well, people still come up to me, will come up and say, you were part of our family, we listen to you, my kids listen to you, And over the course of 40 some years, I've got my grandkids listen to you, and these are my grandkids, and you know, they're teenagers or older, you know, and you become part of people's lives, the fabric of people's lives, their families. And just, they feel that they know you, and they do know you because you kind of spill your guts on the air about everything. They know your personal life, you know.
Was there ever a part of that you felt you couldn't reveal, or did you feel that version of you that went out over the air was essentially 100% of you?
Yeah, you have to be real. You can't be phony, because people will pick up on it right away. You know, they can recognize when you're not being truthful.
Well, when we come back, I want to hear much more from Vic Slick about his decades in radio right after these messages.
Sweetie. Okay, you know what? Let's take off his sweatshirt. Get rid of pictures of him. You don't have to look at him. Goodbye, Dave.
Mom, you don't understand. He's tagged in like 400 of my posts.
I can cut out tags.
No, that's not how it works.
What is a tag?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care would love to share their first with you.
Well, I'm talking with local legend Victor Corral, a.k.a. Vic Slick. You know him from KOLA FM 99.9 on the radio for decades. What was your favorite music to play over all those decades? Obviously, you didn't have a lot of, choice in some of the format changes, that was imposed, by other folks.
Well, I grew up listening to my, siblings, like I mentioned, Rolling Stones. So that 50s and 60s music, I was very familiar with, and I was blessed to get into radio at an oldie station. When I came to KOLA, they were playing oldies, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I was very familiar. So that I've always been partial to that. I love the 80s too. The 80s are real hot right now, and some of the sprinkle in some of the 90s. But yeah, that I would say 50s through the 70s is my genre. I love that.
Well, it must be fortunate that, you landed in Southern California where there was such a collision of, car culture, beach culture, pretty girls, and, just this sort of classic Americana.
Right.
Talk to me about how you got involved with the Rendezvous back to Route 66 and the whole classic car culture scene.
I was working locally at a station, 1039 KBON, 4th and G here in San Bernardino. Doing a 7 to midnight request and dedication shift. And I got a call on the request line from Dan Stark from the San Bernardino Convention and Visitors Bureau. He wanted to meet me and wanted to talk. He said he has this crazy idea to do something called the Route 66 Rendezvous, which goes right through downtown San Bernardino, and to make a celebration and to recognize the Mother Road. And if I was interested. And sure, and we began, created a relationship with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and that was in the early 90s. Our first show and concert was at the Glen Helen, and Little Anthony and the Imperials. I got to introduce that oldies but goodies group, and it was just a fantastic time, and that's how it grew. We did it for quite a few years.
You became the voice.
Yeah, 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 23 years.
Talk to me about the honor that you received in 2012. You were inducted into the Cruisin' Hall of Fame. What was that like?
That was really neat because there were so many people that have been inducted into their on-air personalities, like Charlie Tuna, local people that had something to do with hot rodding, different businesses here in town. Of course, Stater Brothers was the major sponsor. Got to meet and talk with Jack Brown every year. Because he grew up locally too. So it was just a blast. I was the last person inducted into the Cruisin' Hall of Fame before, it dissolved.
What was it like to sort of witness all the changes that you saw in radio over the decades? Because certainly there's been so much, loss of local control, and folks don't have the right to play what they want to play. It's programmed by some server in Cleveland, and what was that like?
Well, we weren't that. KOLA was not that way. KOLA was still independently owned and operated, still to this day. But yeah, these big companies are gobbling up all these smaller markets and then automating them, and it's tough to compete because they can just kind of own the market, monopolize the market if they have to. So. But yeah, and then the format changes, and The music was changing. We had to move with KOLA from 50s and 60s. We've had to progress 70s, 80s, 90s into the 2000s.
People get older.
We got to compete. You know, they had to compete, but it was fun. It's good. It was a great time. It's a great staff there. They have a great program director, great management that have been there longer than I've been there, 30 plus years. The same great account executives and sales staff that know the market, you know, understand the music, know the target demo. So
you've got people out there. They're studying to be broadcasters. They're interning. What advice do you have for the next generation of radio folks?
Get a real job. Run. No. It's tough because of the consolidation and the way the big companies are scaling back. You got these huge companies like iHeartMedia. They own 800 stations, and they're in 150 markets. And other big companies that own hundreds and hundreds of stations. So they're really scaling. It's tough. And now they're competing with streaming,
Sure.
Sirius XM, satellite
Podcasts
radio. Podcast is where everybody's going and where the revenue is generated. So if you can get your chops and get some experience in podcasting, and even if you wanted to get on the air, you can still try and work it. Get an internship, and give it a go.
And where can people connect with you nowadays? I know you retired. You're enjoying your time with your wife and your granddaughters. You know, tell me where people can connect with Vic.
You can always email me. I have a personal email, vic@vicslick.com.
This doesn't go to an assistant, right? It doesn't go to an office. It goes
You're
right
looking at the assistant. I am the assistant.
What do you like about getting those messages from listeners?
Just hearing from people, like I told you the story. That
It
people,
must be emotional.
It is emotional.
To know that, you've touched them, you may never meet them, you may never know them, you were
Right.
just, a voice, in a speaker, maybe in their ear or in their stereo, but just to know that, like you said, you became part of the fabric of their life.
Yeah, I get people that send me pictures, just neat notes, or it's just a great feeling to know that, I was part of their lives. I made them feel good, because everybody loves the music, and what the music does is it brings you back to your first car, your first kiss, your first date, or something emotional in your life. And people share that with me, and it's good to hear from them. And it just makes you feel good that maybe I was doing something right.
Well, Vic, thank you so much. Thank you for all the decades in radio. Radio is still around. You can go to KOLA 99.9 FM. Vic, wonderful to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Visit iealive.com.